Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are beginning with tonight's show, the 33rd year, I interview writers about their craft, what they're working on, what they've accomplished, what they might be planning for the future. It's a little bit wider net than that, however. We have had on other artists. We have had on painters, musicians, actors. So if you have an idea for a writer who might be a good fit for the Writer's Block or another variety of artists, watch for our address at the end of the show. We would love to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that the Writer's Block and all the original programming that comes out of 1623 Studios is a result of cable access television. It's a really important, valuable community service, and you don't get it if you subscribe to Dish or other systems for accessing the internet. So stick with cable, stick with the Writer's Block. I'm especially happy to say tonight that our premiere show is going to go back to a tradition that we've had since 2003 by opening the season with the winners of the Poetry Without Paper competition from the spring of that particular year. That was interrupted by COVID, but now, 2022, we can go back to that tradition. And today we are going to have most of the winners from this spring's contest. Now, one of the winners couldn't be here because of a previous engagement. One is not here yet. We're waiting for her. And the honorable mentions, we just don't have room or time or the half hour, really, to get everybody in. So I'm going to read their names to get everybody some credit, but they could not be here because of constraints. The winners this year were, for the high school, Olivia Hogan Lopez. Her poem was Tears of the Chrysanthemum. The middle school winners were, first, Emma Wilt for Ascending Like Icarus. Second, Esme Saruf for The Wrong Picture. And Alina Brown for Cracked But Never Broken. Alina cannot be here, she had a previous engagement. The honorable mentions for middle school are Riley Kavanaugh for The Owl and Emily Rattray for Where I'm From. The elementary winners are Kathleen Rowe Joyce for her poem Magical Books, Gabriella McKierney for her poem Fifth Grade, and Elizabeth Olson for her poem Friends. The honorable mentions are Bianca Numerosi for Lost and Jack Fritson for Gravity. Those are all the winners, and I want to congratulate all of them again, especially those who could not be here. I'm going to turn now and welcome the elementary winners who are all with us. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Writer's Block. Kathleen and, I get all the names right, and Gabriella and Elizabeth. Now I'm going to ask you one by one, the easiest thing in the world, to share with us the poem that you wrote that won in the contest. And Kathleen Rowe Joyce, your poem, Magical Books, was first. And I'd love to hear you read that now for us.
All right.
Just as loudly as you can.
Okay. If you want to jump into a whole new world, if you want to see a lizard with his tail curled, grab a book and settle down, have some fun in a winter town, doze off in a siesta, dance in a fiesta, see fantastical creatures, meet two-headed teachers. You're in your ordinary bedroom, then you're on sky-high adventures. Zoom! There's fiction and realistic, they're both wonderfully fantastic. Read your books galore until there's not a single one more.
Thank you very much. I think applause is appropriate. I should have mentioned earlier that we have an audience here of the parents of our winners, and I'm going to ask them to applaud now and then. The second elementary winner is Gabriella McKierney for her poem, Fifth Grade. Gabriella, would you read that for us, please?
Of course.
Fifth grade is my last year of elementary school. I know I'm sad, but middle school is a new beginning. Fearless, smart, and kind is what I'm calling my peers. Throughout school, these people have been with me. Hearing all the talk about how my class is bad and people want to switch, but I still don't. Gabriella is me, and people see you change when you get to middle school. Right, yeah, I will change, but I'll never lose the friends I've made. Art teachers, PE teachers, music teachers, and regular teachers. Doing this chapter of my life with these people was and is the best. Everyone I've met at Plum Cove will stay with me forever.
Thank you very much. Now, the third winner is Elizabeth Olsen. Her poem is Friends.
Finding them is hard. Remember to be yourself. It is important to have a friend. Everyone deserves one. Never give up on finding one. Days or weeks it might take. Someday you will find one.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, as I said before the show, I wanted to ask you some questions just to find out what you do at school and why you write poetry. Can you tell me where you got the idea for your poem, Kathleen?
Well, for a while I thought of what I could do, and then what I could write about, and then after for like 10 minutes of walking around the kitchen trying to think of what I should write about, I thought of how much I liked books, so I wrote a poem about books.
That's a great idea. Can you name us one book that you really like?
Well, I really like the Harry Potter series.
Yeah? Have you read them all?
Yep.
Those are big books, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you got through all of them?
Uh-huh.
Have you seen all the Harry Potter movies?
Not yet, but
Have you seen one or two, or
I've seen 5 of them.
how many are there? 9?
There's 8.
8? So you're almost finished. And you read all the books.
Uh-huh.
That's impressive. That's a lot of reading. Good. Very good. I want to ask you, I want to make sure I don't get the name. I do get the names right. Gabriella. Where did you get the idea for your poem?
Well, actually waited until the last day to actually know what my theme was going to be for my poem. But I had already entered 2 other poems that I had written in school, but I wanted to write a third one that I made up myself at home. And so it was the last day, the deadline, and I woke up and I was just like, I know what I'm going to write about. My last year of elementary school. And I wrote it in 5 minutes. And I was just like, oh, this is the best. This is great. I mean, I'm not too happy that it's the last day, but yeah.
So it came to you like that, sort of. Good. It's sort of like walking around and wondering what you should write, and you think, oh, I love books. And you were walking around wondering what I should write and thinking, they're going to kick me out of grade school. I'm getting up to the middle school. That's good time. Good.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, tell me how you thought of your poem.
Well, at school one day, I was writing poems in my journal at school, and I wrote this poem, and then I just changed it up a little bit. I put in the thing, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to enter into Poetry Without Paper. I should enter it, and yeah, so I entered it, and with 2 other poems that I wrote at home.
Good, good. And can you tell us, you read a book, some book that is important to you?
I like graphic novels, and I do like the Harry Potter series too.
Effie, can you think of a title? A graphic novel, you said?
Yeah. I like The Babysitter's Club and other
I'm sorry,
graphic
the what?
novels. The Babysitter's Club
Yeah.
and other graphic novels.
I want to go back and ask you a tough question. Is there a favorite teacher that you remember who made a difference to you?
Well, it was probably my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Schaffner.
Mrs.
Schaffner.
Miss Shatford.
Schaffner.
I'm sorry.
Schaffner.
Schaffner.
Yes.
Let's hear it for Miss Schaffner. teachers do a lot of wonderful work, and they don't get as much honor as they should. Now, Gabriella, can you tell us about a teacher that you like?
Well, yes. So it was my second grade teacher too, actually. Her name was Miss Quigley.
Quigley.
Yes, Quigley. And she had the greatest approach to teaching, I think. She really had us do a lot of hands-on stuff. So it wasn't like you were never sitting in a seat like for more than 5 minutes, because she always just had this great opportunity or project that she would have us doing, which would also teach us something. So yeah, I mean, she made a great impact on my life, and I think all of my students too.
Okay, she gets applause. Same question, Elizabeth, a teacher.
I think it was my third grade teacher, Miss Silvera. She was like nice, and I loved her because she was very awesome. And it was the COVID year, so I was really upset when I had to miss that part of my year with her.
Good. Applause for her. I think the teachers and the students surviving through those COVID years should all get medals for persisting. Now, I got to ask one of our production people if our last guest came. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. Wonderful. Okay. I want to thank our elementary winners, Kathleen and Gabriella and Elizabeth, for being here on the show and sharing with us your knowledge about poetry and books and teachers. Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask you to put your mics down, and we're going to have the new crew, the middle school poets, come up and take your places. Thank you. Let's hear it for the elementary school. So the middle school students, poet winners are Emma Wilt, or Emma, would you sit on my left? Yeah. There, and then Esme, and then Alina Brown, who cannot be here. I want to shout out to Alina. We're missing you, Alina. I'm sorry you couldn't be here. Perhaps we'll see you on another TV show another year. Welcome to the writer's block, Emma and Esme. So those don't need, they don't need sound check, right? They're okay, they're good. Welcome to the writer's block.
Thank you.
And you know the routine now because you saw me with the elementary students. First of all, as Emma, would you read your poem, Ascending Like Icarus, as loudly as you can?
Ascending like Icarus, my goals residing in the sun, though my wings are of achievements and forged from expectations. It seems the higher I fly, the more worn out I become, as do my wings. I am no longer labeled genius, others look at me now as wasted potential. I reach for the sun, my flight is very unstable, I am now descending towards the ocean. My pride, my glory, my self-esteem, melting away with these wretched wings.
Thank you very much. Second place winner is Esme Saruf for The Wrong Picture. Would you read that for us, please?
White corridors, immaculate and glistening, shining with sanitation, he came down, rattling and clattering, dragging along his strange contraption, which I was too naive to recognize. Colorful cords snaking under his hospital gown, connecting to the veins that carried the same blood that ran through mine, diminishing the malignancy that was not yet killing him. He could still smile then, do the crossword, or converse with the family. He could still read my brother's poems or watch the news. But time would come to pass. His prescription would cease to combat the illness growing within him. A different image becomes normal over time. We pelted each other with ice chips, played round after round after round of cards, cycling from kings to peasants to servants and back again. Minute Maid lemonade running through our veins made us forget why we were here. They didn't forget. They put up fronts, all for me, the little one. People streamed in and out of his room. I wasn't allowed. I was too young to look death in the face. I was to be protected, permitted at last to see him. Wrong. It was all wrong. His emaciated figure accentuated by the hospital gown, filling in the gaping holes where flesh once resided. Silence. All thinking the same thing, too afraid to speak. He was barely conscious, eyes half closed. "Leave me be," he said. We left. Lined up against the wall like cows to slaughter, standing in a line subdued and drawn. The picture faded. He was gone.
Thank you very much. Now I have this interesting question I always like to ask the poets. How did you think of that idea of a poem about Icarus? Emma. Yes.
The story was really interesting to me, and I just kind of, when I was thinking about writing a poem, it just kind of like came to me. And I was thinking like this story could be like made into a metaphor for a lot of things, so that's what I did, and I wrote the poem.
So it's an old Greek myth or story. Why did that attract you right away?
I think it's just because of like, it's not really a kind of story that you'd often hear.
It's not the what?
It's not like a story that you'd often hear. It's like really interesting and just different.
And it's a real clear message, kind of melting away, everything melting away. Esme, tell me about how you thought of your poem.
Well, I was thinking about the experience because I think some of my family had been talking about it, and I was thinking of this particular experience for me, and I wasn't really able to remember a whole lot, so I was like really trying to dig deep in that memory, and so it kind of came out in a kind of poetic way, and I was like, wait, I should write this down. So I wrote it down, and yeah, I just kind of flowed.
How old was the memory? Remind me.
This is like 4 years, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's good to remember anything after 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you enjoy writing the process?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was really interesting to see what I did remember and how that came up for me.
That's good. I love to think about how creative people create.
Yeah.
I want to ask you if you're reading anything. I'll start with Esme now. What do you read?
Well, I think my favorite book is the Three Dark Crowns series. Yeah.
Say that again?
The Three Dark Crowns series. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, it's not a particularly popular book. It's like in an alternate universe kind of thing. It's got like a battle for the crown kind of thing.
And Emma, are you reading anything these days?
Yeah, I read a lot of young adult, and I don't really have one particular book that is like my favorite because I just read like...
Who's the author again?
I read like a lot of different things, so mainly young adult. So I don't have like one particular book in mind that really like I think would be my favorite.
Are you usually reading something all the time?
Yeah.
Now, I know that you don't spend a lot of time watching TV or streaming, but if you have to, what do you watch?
I don't really watch a lot.
Nothing in particular?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Esme.
I'm very different from Emma. I watched basically everything and anything under the sun. I've watched a lot of shows and movies.
You watch?
I've watched a lot of things. find it interesting just to like play something while I'm like folding laundry or like cleaning my room or doing something like that. I just will play something. So I've watched a lot of things.
So you watch Dr. Pol on the Wild Network?
I'm not sure about
He's
that
a
one.
veterinarian.
I'm not sure about that one.
Law and Order,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
they're addictive. I
Yeah.
want to ask you both now if you can think of a teacher that you've learned something from and you liked, Emma.
My 7th grade ELA teacher, Miss Danaher, a lot of people, when they like remember her, like she was very like strict and like she wanted us to mainly just like be sure we got our work done, but she really taught me a lot.
And what's her name again?
Miss Danaher.
I've heard her name mentioned before. Esme.
I think Miss Kuchar, my 8th grade English teacher, she really pushed us to think deeply about what we were reading and what we were learning, and I really enjoyed that. That was a really good learning experience.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Emma and Esme, for being with us on the Writer's Block and sharing your poetry.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, if you would put your mics on the table, I'm going to ask our last guest to come up, who just arrived. She is Olivia Hogan Lopez, who graciously left a class that just got out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon today. We're recording in the afternoon. The class got out at 3 o'clock, and you raced up here, and this is the first week of your first semester at Harvard. But you still got up here for the Writer's Block. I want to thank you very much for that, Olivia. I'm very happy to have you here. It's a wonderful example of how poetry rules the world. And I'm sure poetry was key to your success in getting into Harvard.
Perhaps.
How is it so far?
It's
Tough?
great. No, it's tough, but I really enjoy my classes so far.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Now you won the spring contest for Tears of the Chrysanthemum. Would you read that for us?
Sweet, sweet is the scent of the chrysanthemum, once recalled with gold, whose crimson petals weep with the reputation of blood. By living, she reminds me of my loss, but by death she is the symbol. I mourn for her, who was blamed and killed for her red coat, and whose yellow petals are wilted with streaming tears. By any other name, she would smell as sweet, but for her memorable face, I mourn and weep.
Thank you very much. Where did you get the idea for that?
My mom really likes flowers, and I've always been interested by like the language of flowers, and there are so many different versions for the same flower. I won't go into too much detail about it, but yes, I was like walking in my garden, and yeah, I was reminded of that.
So it was the idea was there kind of present in you already because of your love of flowers in the garden?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I think I forgot to ask for applause for the poem. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to ask you some of the same questions that I asked the other students. Can you think of a book, if you read it all, that you like and you like to share, or a couple of books that you'd like to share with us?
I love a lot of books, so it's always a hard choice, but I do really like poetry. And my favorite poetry book is Palgrave's Golden Treasury. It's a mix of different like sonnets and works by different artists, but it's
So it's an
very
anthology
beautiful.
of
Yes.
American and British, or
Yes,
only
American and British.
American?
But, yeah.
Give us another book.
I like a lot of, well, I'll give you a poet instead. I like a lot
Sure.
of T.S. Eliot's work. Yeah, that's like anything by him. I got a great book as a gift, actually. Robert Frost's poetry would
Still works, huh?
still works. But yeah.
And you know the four quartets, Eliot's four quartets, where he talks
Yes.
about
The
Cape
Savages
Ann.
and- yeah. Bert Norton is my favorite,
Yeah,
probably.
Bert Norton.
Yeah.
He is good. He is good. Very
Yes.
good. I'm
Um,
glad you're emphasizing poetry. Are you
yeah.
going to be an English major, by the way?
No, actually, I don't think so. Well, we'll see. I'm undeclared, but I really like environmental engineering, so that's an option. But I don't know. There's
Poetry
so
and
many
environmental
opportunities.
engineering.
The beauty of poetry is that you don't have to major in it to appreciate it, I think. So
That's true.
I definitely
That's true.
intend to
Yes.
continue
True.
learning
Yeah.
about poetry. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Can you think of a teacher, way back when you were in high school last year, who made an impression on you?
I've had so many great teachers, but in terms of English classes, I
Well,
always
English or others?
English comes to mind because I find like turning in essays and poems very like intimate, and I find it sometimes like challenging. But my English teacher last year, Mr. Tells, was very supportive of everyone in the class and just very kind. So he's definitely
Let's
left
hear it
an
from Mr.
impression on me.
Tells.
Yeah.
I know him.
Yes.
I think it's rare that you hear people enthusiastic about poetry. Poetry is respected. Everybody says, "Oh, that's wonderful." Get out of here. don't. And I've told people, they say, "What do you do?" I say, "I'm a poet." Oh, God. I'm afraid I'm going to catch it if I talk to you. Where did you learn your love and respect for poetry?
Now that's where it gets hard. I couldn't say for sure. I don't know. I love music, so of course poetry ties into that. My older sister loves poetry as well, both of my sisters actually. And the three of us, sounds kind of silly, but the three of us like to recite poems to each other or talk about poetry or books that we read in school. So we would always after dinner have conversations about, whatever it was that we learned in class or maybe poems. So it's all very dear to me, but yeah, I like poems.
At the library
that.
during the ceremony, I quoted James Dickey's definition of poetry, just the best damn thing that ever was in the entire universe. You would kind of agree with that?
I think so.
Good.
I would agree with
That's
that.
good to hear. I agree. We're almost out of time. So I want to thank you very much for racing from Cambridge to the show. And I think that's a good tribute to your character, to poetry, and also I think you're a good example to our younger students about the magic of poetry. I know you owe everything to poetry. Right?
It's true.
So stay right there while I close the show. Thank you
All
for
right.
coming up.
Thank
here.
you for having me.
I want to thank everybody in our TV audience as well for being with us this evening in the premiere show of the Writer's Block. If you've learned something about Gloucester's student poets and their enthusiasm for poetry and books and learning, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next time on the Writer's Block. Good night.